sandboxes and play in the surf. He always knew he wanted to be a scientist and wanted to work outdoors. And little did he know that later he'd be actually on the Oprah Winfrey Show for having one of the best jobs in America. And I'd say that's true. Because his research took him around the world, he was often asked by people for recommendations on the beaches. And out of those casual conversations grew the top 10 list. And he's going to tell you a little bit about the criteria, how he does them every year, and most importantly, we're going to hear about this year's top 10 list. I give you Stephen Leatherman, Dr. Beach.
Well, thank you very much, Virginia. It's a pleasure to be here. As Virginia mentioned, I was involved in studying beaches for beach erosion reasons, or I worked with the Department of Interior to look at the level of developments for many years. I had the pleasure of working with Larry Rockefeller of the Rockefellers. So in that regard, what I did was I traveled around the United States for 2 years and visited every beach in the United States, collected 60,000 maps, and took about 50,000 photographs. That's how I got to see every beach. The pleasure of the Department of Interior and working with Larry Rockefeller. So that was done long ago. I, at that point, still hadn't really thought about grading beaches, but as a professor at the University of Maryland College Park for many years in the Washington, D.C. area, I taught a very popular course called Waves and Beaches. The other person who taught the most popular course there was a woman named Eugenie Clark. I don't know if you remember her or not. She's called the Shark Lady. And she and I were had the most popular courses on campus. Her course on sharks and other sea monsters, and my course on waves and beaches. So unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago, living here in Sarasota, actually. So she started right now the boat marine lab, by the way. So, to make a long story short, I taught this course and had a lot of students, 250 students every semester, and hundreds waiting to get in line. And a number of journalism students taught the course. And one of them went to work for one of the magazines, travel magazines in New York City, and told his editor I was the beach professor, the beach doctor. And so it all happened in 1989, way back then, when I got a call from the editor, and frankly I was on the way out the door for a trip to China at that time. I was going to be a visiting professor to Peking University. And he called me and I said, well, I don't have any time. I've got to rush to the airport. I'm kind of a last minute person. And at any rate, he says, well, okay, just give me off the top of your head your 10 best beaches. And I literally did. I mean, I just thought of ones that I remembered and liked and set them out and ran away and forgot all about it. And actually, I was in China I was supposed to be there for a month or two doing lectures at Peking. And what happened was I was there were no classes during the Tiananmen demonstrations. So I found myself going down with the students marching down to Tiananmen Square for democracy. And so I forgot all about beaches at that point, no lectures, and I was all for the students, and I lived on campus with the students. And then I took a trip with my professor, Dr. Han, who was my sponsor, off to the coast, on the Chinese coast, saw the Great Wall and all that, and came back the night of the massacre. It was very sad. I came there, and there was huge crowds, and came in on a train. By the way, back then they had trains actually in China for coal power. And the soot came out of the coal power, and there was no air conditioning because air conditioning was considered, capitalism or something. Bad type of thing, not socialism. So, at any rate, I'll tell you just about that in just a few more minutes, finish the story. So, I stopped there to see my friends on the square, and I said, well, I'm really tired after this long train ride in this choo-choo train. We went back to the campus, and then people came in streaming in saying people were killed. So after all that, when I finally got back to Maryland, I had forgotten all about it, and I saw this a few months later, this glossy magazine called Travel Holiday Magazine in my box, and it said something about beaches at the top. I thought, well, I know something about beaches. And I forgot all about talking to this person. This is really a true story. And so then I opened it up, and there was what people now call a sidebar, not a real article, and it had my list, and he said, here's an order, in order of beaches. Well, no, that wasn't the order, that's the order I thought of. And immediately the phone started ringing off the hook. I had hundreds of calls, and everybody talking to me about, oh, this list, and I mentioned actually a beach here on the Gulf Coast when I just visited, and got a call from the CVB. I didn't know what a CVB was. I said, can you explain who you are and what you're doing? And it was actually Lee County, because I put on one of their beaches, kept people one of those. And they said, we're Lee County. I said, well, where is Lee County? He said, what do you mean, where's Lee County? Well, I only knew the beaches. I didn't know the counties, I'm sorry, at that point in time, early on, right? And now I kind of know where things are. But at any rate, that's where it all got started. And so I thought, wow, two things Americans love. They love lists and they love beaches. So I'd like to tell you that I was a genius, put all this together, but it really was by accident. I have to confess the truth, okay? So then I was like, I just got started. Okay, I think we're back on now. Thank you. So after that, people started asking me, what are your criteria, Dr. Leatherman? You're well-known, I published a lot of journal articles, quite well-known scientifically at that point, but not so much by the public. And I thought, oh my gosh, I better put all this together. So I came up with 50 criteria. I searched literature, being a scientist and all that, and no one had ever rated beaches before. They had rated rivers, believe it or not. There's some good work on rating rivers, but that doesn't apply to beaches too well, does it? So I worked it out, the 50 criteria, with the idea that, yes, some people might think they're a little bit scientific, but it was all with the idea of the public and for beach quality. So it really breaks down to physical factors, and that has to do with the sand, color, size. Of course, you guys are cut out of the park here, number one in that for sure. Beautiful white crystal quartz sand. Had to do with the water temperature during the beach season, the types of the weather you have, the beach weather. So a lot of factors there. There's biological factors. Are there problems with pollution? You can imagine all those things that go into that. It also has to do with a lot of biting flies. If you've been on Cape Cod, I love Cape Cod, I live there. They have these green-head flies. You might know about those things? They can take a chunk of meat out of you. And you don't feel it, if they hit you, you look at your legs bleeding. I love Cape Cod, those green-head flies, but I can't count off of that. You've got to count off of that. And I love